He offered me personally in May of 1992 $2 billion if I would join his team and not do what I've been doing.
You know why $2 billion is hard to believe? Because the only reason he would have gone to $2 billion is because you kept saying no to 50 million, 10 million, 100 million, 200 million, and it eventually goes to $2 billion. Person to go from zero to will give you $2 billion for this, it's truly, the word is unbelievable, because somebody would offer 100 grand, 500 grand,
well,
$1 million.
They knew that none of that amount would have mattered.
So Stephen Greer has a story that he tells that basically in the 90s, a general offered him $2 billion to step away from UFOs, right? To stop hunting UFOs, to stop searching, to stop looking, to stop investigating, to basically stop, right? Pay him off. $2 billion. This is back in the 90s, y'all, which is like, I don't know, a lot even more now, but even back then, right? And who is this general that offered him this money, and what did he think was going to happen, right? So on the most recent episode of Patrick Bet-David's podcast, Dr. Stephen Greer was a guest. And, well, if you're familiar with Patrick Bet-David's podcast, he is a, very much into finances, kind of a very wealthy gentleman who started this big insurance company, and he runs this, it's called Valuetainment, right? And they talk a lot about finances and the stock market and politics and that sort of thing. So he definitely knows a lot about this market. And when it comes to just financial strategy, let's put it that way. So when Greer tells him this, well, Patrick Bet-David immediately starts pushing back and just can't get it through his head, right? So take a look at this first clip, and then I'll meet you on the other side. I've got two clips to show you.
Is it an actual, is there actually a undisclosed division where your job is to gaslight and confuse people, or is it
absolutely,
or is it everyone's job to gaslight and distract? Because like the opposite of a marketing, how like the propaganda book that was written,
right?
The opposite of marketing, which is you're marketing a lie to confuse the American people, so they're looking here versus here. You're saying there's a division of people that do that intentionally.
Yes, it's a whole counterintelligence, psychological warfare operations out of CIA and other agencies, and that's what they do. And I've known some of these players since the early 90s. One of them that had been involved back in those days was had been head of special forces and Army intelligence named General Albert Stubblebine, and he offered me personally in May of 1992 $2 billion if I would join his team and not do what I've been doing. And I was in my 30s, and as a young doctor, I thought, well,
$2 billion, Steve.
Yes.
You know how hard that is to believe?
I don't care. Put me under a lie detector. Ask my wife. We're having our 46th anniversary this year. That's what happened. Then he approached her. But you have to understand the money involved. Why is this so secret? It either exists or it doesn't exist. It does exist. How could it be kept so secret? And this is a long discussion to get into of what the modus operandi is of counterintelligence on this. But, it's through bribery, blackmail, threats, wet works, targeted killings, assassinations.
You know why $2 billion is hard to believe? Because the only reason he would have gone to $2 billion is because you kept saying no to 50 million, 10 million, 100 million, 200 million, and it eventually goes to $2 billion.
No, because they knew, okay, let's cut to something that's very controversial. This is what's starting to come out through these black sites where they have operators that target the non-human craft.
I mean, Patrick Bet-David, fellow Patrick here, is not buying that at all, right? He just can't wrap his head around how the offer would just start at $2 billion. And I agree with his sentiment here, right? Why wouldn't you start lower and work your way up? Right? Wouldn't you try something else first to see if they said yes? And then keep going up again. $2 billion back in the 90s? Ungodly amount of money. Right now, that's still a lot of money, right? It's crazy. And I think this story, Stephen Greer's told it before, but he's never really been pressed like this about it. And look, Patrick Bet-David does not let this go. Okay, he brings it up again in the podcast, and they even go over this general a little bit who offered him the money, right, to find out what exactly is going on. And Stephen Greer kind of clarifies a little bit. It wasn't exactly this general who offered him the money. And that's the thing, right? When you start to press people about claims like this, the details start to change a little bit. Oh, well, it was actually this. Oh, it was actually that, you know. So it's always a little bit different. It's like that friend that comes back from, tells you about his weekend with something on a vacation. It's just so exaggerated from what actually happened. You know what I mean? And that's fine because we often make ourselves the heroes in our own stories. That's just how it goes. We're all susceptible to that. And, Greer's been telling this story for a long time. I think people just buy it. And he kind of uses it as just a way to show, hey, they've tried to buy me. This is serious. Look what kind of money they're talking about. Clearly there's something going on here. But I think some proof or evidence of that particular offer, again, needs to be provided. And again, Patrick Bet-David just does not let it go.
So I think the value, I don't think I'm important in this at all. I think
I'm still stuck on $2 billion because to me,
that's nothing to these guys.
Well, but no, hear me out. Rob, can you pull up the Stubblebine fellow, if you don't mind? Fun fact about this guy, he was born on February 6th, and he died on February 6th. And Ronald Reagan was born, I believe, on February 6th. If you can go up to, so here's this is the person that offered you $2 billion.
Correct.
So U.S. Army general who active duty spent 32 years, beginning an Army officer, later on, intelligence, he's credited redesigning U.S. Army intelligence. Okay, over the course of it, he became widely known that he maintained a keen interest in psychic warfare throughout his career. He sought to develop an army of soldiers with special powers, such as the ability to walk through walls. Whoa.
Yep.
Okay, interesting.
Now, there's still more to the clip, so stay with me. I just wanted to interrupt to say, if anybody was going to offer Stephen Greer $2 billion, I guess it would be this guy who wants to create these, super soldiers, if you will, that can walk through walls. What is this, X-Men? I mean, you imagine the first day of training of that. How does that go down? Guys were going to be walking through walls, I don't know. How do you lean into that? Again, very interesting.
So he offered you $2 billion. So,
well, he was representing a group that had that access.
Why would they? So you were 30 years old. They wanted to give you $2 billion.
No, in '92 I would have been 36.
36 years old. So when he offered, you know why that's tough? You ever seen the movie Horrible Bosses, where they say, "Hey, we're trying to kill our bosses," and he says, "You got to go talk to motherfucking Jones." And they go, and the guy they're negotiating with, he says, "Hey, we want to take out our bosses, $50,000." And then he says, $500, I'll do it, and it kind of goes to the bottom. It's like, for a person to go from zero to, we'll give you $2 billion for this, it's truly, the word is unbelievable because somebody would offer $100,000, $500,000,
well,
$1 million.
They knew that none of that amount would have mattered. They thought if it was large enough and had real power behind it, because they had money from the collapse of the Soviet Union out of Eastern Europe that they had confiscated through these black programs and rather criminal tentacles that they were operating. Later he left all that behind. So I'm talking early 90s here, not what he did, in the 2000s. But they had the ability to do that, and I think they thought I would be more trouble than they wanted to risk. And I think they really wanted to get people involved in their projects that they could control, because money controls people. And this is why I've always rejected offers of money or position or power, and do to this day. But that's not often done. And I guess they had a reading on who I was as a soul or a person, that it would have to be a big number to move me. And though I must say, when he went behind my back to my wife thought he was so nice. And I said, yeah, devils speak with forked tongue, because of my grandmother's Cherokee. But
so you try to charm your wife?
Yes. Yeah.
And what did he say that maybe your wife came to you and said, "Babe, you should consider this"?
Well, there's a lot of flattery, the usual things that con artists and people like that do.
So you would call him a con man?
Well, on this, certainly. I mean, but he was an operator. He was someone who was operating with a number of other people who are still around today, some of them, working that issue, trying to divert people who could be a little bit too much trouble. As Gordon Creighton said, who used to publish flying saucer review that you know Prince Philip and Prince Charles would get. He told me when we interviewed him at his cottage in England, he says, people who are a little too much trouble, we just can erase them, you know, and get rid of them.
Yeah, because when you say $2 billion, it's a lot easier to get rid of you than pay you $2 billion.
Correct.
If they have, if a person has enough power to approve a $2 billion bribe, that person also has the same enough power to also eliminate you.
Correct.
So why waste $2 billion?
Well, and those attempts happened after that. But anyway, I don't want to get too much into that part of the person. My personal story is not, it's a tragic story, actually. But so there's no point in rehashing 30 years of that. We don't have time.
All right, so there's a lot to unpack there, right? I mean, again, Patrick Bet-David is not buying this, right? Why would you start so high with an offer? Why wouldn't you start lower and work your way up? He gives that Horrible Bosses movie, which is an interesting reference to use, but I get the sentiment, and I kind of agree with it, right? But, you know, Stephen Greer is saying, well, then they went to his wife, and they tried to butter her up, maybe with some, you know, brunch, and see if she changed her mind, you know what I mean? Oh, you know, honey, we're offering your husband $2 billion. You know, I mean, I don't know, just very hard to believe all of this. And look, Stephen even goes so far as to call this guy a con artist, right? Which is, again, these are quite strong allegations to make against somebody for this, right? I mean, what's interesting is he basically tries to move on from this, right? He doesn't want to talk about it, and he just like, we don't have the time to get into all that, and then they move on from it, you know, to talk about other stuff. But Patrick Bet-David just does not want to let this go. And I think that's going to stick with them. You know, that when you say something like that, that can affect your credibility with that person, like for everything you say, right? Because now Patrick Bet-David is going to be questioning any of his sort of outlandish claims, because he's going to be thinking, dude, but you told me about this $2 billion thing. That doesn't make sense. What else doesn't make sense? Right? That's why you got to be careful with stuff, you know, making claims like that. Even if it were true and you can't prove it and it sounds unbelievable, just kind of, you know, it's probably something you should keep to yourself. But again, it's Stephen Greer is just expecting people to just believe him when he says that stuff, right? Without any proof or evidence, right? For something like that. But that's, again, you make stuff like that, you make claims like that, and then can't provide any evidence or proof. But again, people just start to question everything you say, essentially. If you're just willing to, you know, mouth off about that, what else are you willing to just chirp about, right? And again, he just did, you know, wanted to move past it and talk about something else, you know. So I don't know. Y'all let me know what you think in the comments. Did that really happen? Did Stephen Greer get offered $2 billion to join this general's team and just stop what he was doing, stop investigating UFOs, and just stop the hunt, essentially, right? And what was he going to do on this team? Why wouldn't have Stephen Greer asked for that? You know what I mean? You could have still worked disclosure from that end or something, you know. I don't know. It just, none of it adds up, right? In my opinion. But let me know what you think in the comments. We'll see you guys in the next video. Remember, every day's a gift, y'all. Peace.
I live inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in the cradles, profanities. I see the world through ice covered in ink and bleach. Cross out the ones who heard my cries and watched me weep.